Hello and welcome back, and today I want to discuss a spicy meatball of a subject, one that I normally would have put into a raid room video of its own volition, but we'll come back to that later on. Today I want to discuss reviewing UniFi products. Over the last 6, maybe even 12 months, there has been a snowballing subject around the subject of the amount of creative control that reviewers of UniFi, by UniFi I mean Ubiquiti of course, products, and just how much you can trust them, just how much control the brand may have over the output of those reviewers. Now, some standout examples, of course. Number one, we can talk about a Server the Home article when they were reviewing the fiber router network gateway device, and they highlighted there that they didn't sign up to what was known as the creator agreement there. Now, another one, a great video from Clay over at DPC Tech, where he was talking about his review process and his working relationship with the brand. Now, in the comments of a lot of my videos, I've noticed with UniFi reviews and the ones that I've done, that there has been a rise in a number of comments, basically people saying, you're paid to promote their products, you've been sent it for free, you can only say nice things, you're not allowed to say bad things. And in this video, I'm going to talk about a lot of that. I'm going to talk about products I've reviewed, more precisely products I haven't reviewed. I'm also going to go through a bunch of examples of when I've been talking to the brand during the course of reviews, and this was correlated on a plane, I'll talk about in a moment, where I have had back and forth with the brand. Now, all of this came to a head, by the way, while I was doing a follow-up video on this, the UniFi travel router. Quite a useful little device, I would argue not perfect by any means. And during the course of that, I was on the plane, and that's when I started seeing a lot of messages to me start to arrive after Clay's video asking about my position and my working relationship with Ubiquiti and UniFi reviews. So let's get into the weeds a bit. So first up, let's talk about receiving products for review. I've signed up to what's known as the creator agreement, but when it comes to actually getting the products themselves from UniFi, I review, arguably, I would say less than 10%. I would even go as nuts to say less than 5% of UniFi products. They offer to review pretty much all of them if you want, but I'm not interested in a lot of those products. And moreover, they're not relevant to the channel. When it comes to YouTube and as compares to the website, we've a pretty refined remit that it comes down to data storage and networking technology. And UniFi, frankly, and Ubiquiti, of course, have a wide range of things that are just not relevant to those. So I'm quite cherry picky about the things I'm prepared to talk about. Things like APs, networks, and of course, NAS solutions. More on that in a moment. Now, this is not unique to them. Again, we talked about on the raid room before when we've talked about how 45 drives and Ugreen work, and we talked about their kind of direction and how they market their products via reviewers like on YouTube and the like. And it's largely the same, I would say, universally across the board. There's a few exceptions to that, which I'll talk about in the last stages of the video, with a compare and contrast. But when it comes to talking about their products, if I'm not interested in reviewing it, I'm not requesting it and they ain't sending it. Now, my first experiences with UniFi products were not the products they sent. I'd already been interacting with them formally and informally during different work and jobs and remote consultation and on-site consultation for a number of years. I was already quite familiar with them in a number of ways. It got to a point though when I wanted to migrate away from my existing surveillance and networking setup where I had it patched in with different brands and different networks, that I wanted to create a singular surface that was controllable. And that's why I ended up buying a bunch of UniFi equipment. Now, shortly after that, UniFi got in touch with regards to developing their own NAS solutions. And that goes back, I think, to about 2024 when they started rolling out their first NAS, the UNAS Pro. Now, a lot of the feedback they got for the UNAS Pro when they eventually got released didn't change. The software went through numerous layers of development over that time, and during the course of that, the amount of feedback they got, and arguably a lot of discussions I had with other creators in the background about that product as we were kind of sharing our own experiences, all ended up playing out at the eventual review stage and publication. If you go back to that video I made, alongside other videos as well, where we compared it against other brands, we compared it later on every 3, 6, 12 months looking at that product, None of those reviews were controlled by the brand. The early stuff, the very first wave of stuff, I guarantee all the people that signed up to that creator program submitted their review to UniFi for review. And let's talk about that review process. Let's get the headlines out the way. UniFi have never stopped me saying bad shit about their products. Again, I've said it before, I think the UNAS 2 having a single 2.5 gig network port, it's a nonsense. Same goes for that 4-bay. When I mentioned about these APs running crazy hot, that was in the video that I sent to them, and it's in the eventual review. When I talked about a lot of these products and the things that I don't like about them, or the things where there is room for improvement, they look at that, they've given me feedback on it and said, yeah, we're trying, but they've never stopped me from entering that into the final review. And don't worry, I'm going to be saying some negative shit later on in the video about them, don't worry. But with regards to when I would submit the review that I was about to make to them prior to review, unless something was an inaccuracy or it was something that I flat out got wrong, they didn't try to change it and they wouldn't be allowed to change it. Now, submitting that draft review was part of the agreement for me to receive the unit for testing. Now, that is a slippery tightrope, I think we can all agree. But at the same time, it does open the door to a problem when you receive a device way in advance of release. Now, going through some of the examples that I jotted together during my flight, I've got a bunch of examples where I had back and forth with the brand and I had to change something. So first example, we go back to that UNAS 2. I received this, I think it was around a month and a half, maybe even 2 months prior to it being formally released. And one of my earliest criticisms was, again, going back to that 2.5 gig, but more predominantly, it was the fact that this was a PoE NAS, but what if you didn't have PoE? And I was quite critical of a device that if you had a PoE environment, you'd be laughing, but if you didn't, this thing was a bread bin. And they highlighted in their response that they do plan on shipping it out with a PoE adapter, and that was part of the retail kit. But what I'd received was a non-retail kit. Now, had I published that, that would have been accurate, because now it's available, and at the point of launch, it included that PoE mains adapter. It was a small detail, but a lot of the times when I do submit, say for example, we'll come back to this bad boy shortly, when I do submit a review that I'm going to publish here on the channel in advance, if there is an inaccuracy like that, I would rather know. Next up, there was reviewing the UNAS Pro 8. Now, I got that again a few months in advance of the formal release of that device. I did a lot of my testing on it. I did a lot of my hard drive and SSD testing, the M.2 testing, noise and stuff like that. And I submitted that review just like before. However, the software that I had been running on was several revisions lower than the intended launch software that the device was arriving with. And upon receiving that feedback back, they asked if I could retest with the newer software, because the test results I got were lower than I would have got with the newer software revision. So I performed those extra tests, and they were right. The newer software revision that it was going to be shipped with for public retail did optimize some of that performance. Now, again, had I published that original review with those original performance numbers, it wouldn't have been indicative of what day one products people would have received in terms of performance. That's why when you go on the channel and you look at the UNAS Pro 8, you'll see that I've got a review, and a short while afterwards, I published a full detailed performance with SSD and hard drive. Now, at the same time as that, that same video did talk about the requirement and need for further optimization on the hard drive and SSD media in the original review. It also talked about the outlandish temperatures I was getting from the M.2 that was slotted inside, as well as the criticism of the device not arriving with the M.2 bloody adapters in the retail kit there. They were all things that were submitted in the original review, and frankly, they are all big criticisms that if UniFi had any measure of control, would have probably tried to remove, but they were in the original, they were in the finally released video that we put out on the channel there. And when it came to the performance video afterwards for the UNAS Pro 8, one of the things I also want to touch on with regards to the creator agreement is a lot of the time, and by a lot, I would say by my own personal experience, 100%, the only video I ever submit to review is the first one. So whenever I review any of these products, the first video, as per the creator agreement in order to receive it and provide them evaluation feedback of their product, only the first video goes to them. So for example, the UNAS 2, I believe, is in 4 or 5 different videos. However, only that first one has ever been sent to UniFi. The rest never were, and I never do. It's only ever that first one, so frankly, I can meet the barest minimum of that creator agreement. Not because I think it's inherently bad, it's just a real pain in the bum. In fact, circling back, if you want to after this video, go back to the UNAS Pro and the UNAS Pro 8 reviews that we had here on the channel. Remember, those were the ones that were sent to UniFi and I published. If you watch them, they are riddled in criticism, from the underpowered CPU, lack of upgradability in terms of the RAM, lack of expansion, lack of optimization at launch, the software feeling unfinished, M.2s running too hot, not having the ability to do much with those M.2s. But at the same time, that feedback with them, they were telling me their 1, 3, 6 and 12 month roadmaps at the same time. That's why I went ahead and published a 1, 3, 6 and 12 month update on the UNAS series, because I wanted to commit them to that. And again, only the initial reviews were sent to UniFi there. Next up, Protect. I was reviewing a product that supported UniFi's surveillance platform, Protect. I submitted that first draft to Ubiquiti. One of my biggest criticisms was the lack of ONVIF support, because yes, it's nice for them, I guess, to buy a bunch of new cameras, but what bugged me was that if you had an existing array of ONVIF cameras, in the way that a NAS could normally pick those up, and that is another criticism I've gave to their NAS series, the fact they don't support Protect, but at the same time, I was suggesting that one of the biggest flaws that they had was the lack of support of ONVIF. Now, I got that feedback from them that they said, semi off the record, that they were going towards support of ONVIF and they were changing what they were going to do, but it wasn't available at that time. Now, did I remove that from my review? No, I didn't. I left it in. I actually left it in my love-hate video as well, because they didn't ask for it to be removed. They just gave me feedback on what I said. Having the creator agreement there, I'm not going to say is fantastic, because sometimes, and we'll get onto the negatives in a bit, it can be a right pain in the arse. But I will say, sometimes it is nice to have another set of eyes looking at the things you are saying when they have an informed opinion that might turn around and say, well, actually what you've said there is incorrect. It doesn't mean I have to action it, it doesn't mean I have to remove it, and it doesn't mean I have to take them up on what they're saying. But it can be bloody useful when I'm about to publish a video that says, why do they not support ONVIF? And even then, they're not perfect, because this fiber here, which has got 3 10GBE here, one of the things that I said in my review that annoyed me is that I wasn't able to use the 10GBE here copper as a LAN and turn one of these 2.5Gs into my WAN. And it turned out it's because I was using a version of the software where that hadn't been adopted yet. And that didn't get picked up in the review process anyway, and it went out in the final review and I looked like a right Burke. Another example, I don't even need my bloody book for this, is this, the UniFi travel router. Now, when Ubiquiti shipped this, they let me know via email that it was arriving with alpha software and to not review this in that state because it was not going to arrive with that alpha software. Now, there's multiple ways we could tackle this. Number one, had I reviewed this with alpha software as if in its prototype OS form it was going to be the final released version, that review would have been DS. It would have been a waste of time because it would have been software that the brand themselves had already highlighted was not the release candidate. And I think the majority of reviewers from YouTube to written word will confirm that a lot of the time when you receive a product pre-release, it arrives with pre-release software. And depending on the state and the version of that software, alpha, beta, sub-RC, that impacts things, and you shouldn't review a device on software that it's not going to be for end users. And even then, the release candidate for this, if you go to Reddit, you go to the forums, and you can see pretty much everyone saying update this to the latest firmware immediately. Even the full software, the post-RC version of that software, was still not ideal, something that was reflected in reviews, reflected in mine and others, and trust me, will be reflected in the follow-up video on this device. Bottom line, had I published that review utilising that sub-release software, it would have been a car crash, not only for it and describing a product unfairly, but also on me for not taking due diligence, understanding that the software that I'm utilising is not the intended final release. But I will say that ends up resulting in one of the things that really bugs me about reviewing Ubiquiti products, more predominantly the NAS solutions. Again, less than 5% of their product range I think I've ever talked about. And that is embargo dates. Now, Ubiquiti didn't invent embargoes. They've been around since reviewing shit in the 70s and 80s. It is a date where, at this point, you're allowed to share your review. Now, that is part of the agreement that you are sent a product that's currently going through testing and development, and based on that feedback, they might delay the release of something based on the feedback they receive in advance to optimize it, to improve it. Now, I get it. There are good and bad reasons for doing it, but it is super annoying when I've got something here in the studio and I cannot share that review until a given date. It's part of the agreement, and I get it, and we've already talked about it with software, why that makes sense, where they get feedback, they then change, they improve, they optimize, but still, it is at best a bit tacky and at worst annoying for everyone involved when all of the reviews thunder at the same time. You must have had that, where all of a sudden one product is suddenly everywhere on your social media, everywhere. I get why they do it, but it's one of the things about the creator program that I wish I could change. Another part of working with Ubiquiti on these reviews that has always rubbed me up the wrong way is to do with opening the bloody things up. Now, again, you may find the odd exception to the rule I have spotted in the past, but in the agreement I have with Ubiquiti about reviewing these products, I can't rip them open and show you the guts on the inside. Now, that only extends to the first video, the first article, the initial review, the agreement I have when I receive these products and I've agreed to remain within this contract. Part of that is I can't just rip the guts out of the rack mount and show you the inside. Now, they say they do that for confidentiality reasons, but again, that only extends to the first review, the first video, the first article. After that, I can rip the arse out of these things and show it to you here on camera. Now, again, it seems like a minor complaint, but I don't like the idea that that is something I can't do in my initial review when we're looking at the inside. A case in point, when I was reviewing the UNAS Pro and I opened it up in my original draft, the brand got in contact and said, we'd like you to remove that as per the agreement, as we didn't want to show the inside of our device. And because of the contract, I acquiesced. That is an example of something where I had to make a change, and it wasn't based on inaccuracy, it wasn't based on error, it was based on that agreement. However, in later videos, we had some fun, didn't we? Also, I will say, when you do receive a product from Ubiquiti for review, sometimes you have no idea when the embargo date is going to end. Now, I'm not going to defend them with this statement, but I'm going to try and be as objective as possible. A lot of the time it might be that the feedback they're getting from people via the multiple feedback forms that reviewers fill out for these devices might be that they go, well, we can't release this yet, it's not ready, and then they go through multiple software revisions. Again, I've spent more time with their NAS than any other UniFi product from Ubiquiti, and I'll tell you right now, the length of time between me receiving it and the review going out because of the embargo and eventual availability on their website differs wildly. Now, again, I say it's a criticism, but take it as you find it, because on the one hand, one could argue at least it means they're listening to a lot of that feedback, but bloody hell, it can be annoying when you're tying up all of your network equipment, tying up all of your drives on some equipment where, frankly, you just wish you could just release your review of it. But the problem is, if they are optimizing that software, any of the testing you've done has become invalidated, because once again, it is based on software that has is going to be superseded by an RC or a final candidate release. But let's talk about money, because I had some fun writing this on the plane. let's talk about how much UniFi pay. And, well, they don't, technically. They don't pay for the review. When you receive the unit, it's yours to keep, to do with what you will. If you don't want it anymore, you can send it back to them. That's it. And I'll be honest, most of these bits of equipment after the review either get factored into comparisons, or they get built into an existing network setup, or they sit in the background of the studio over there for the Raid Room videos. But that doesn't include affiliated links via sales on their website. Let's be honest, whether it is Amazon, whether it is eBuyer, Scan, B&H, and of course UniFi themselves, Ubiquiti themselves on their own website, when it comes to selling products via commission and affiliated links, that's just a thing. And unfortunately, that is a thing with YouTube. It is a thing with written reviews on editorial websites. It's just there. Now, we're going to get into the weeds a little bit here of the channel, but I've pulled out a couple of examples from the channel with regards to videos that have done, I would say, well. Keeping in mind that a video doing well isn't about the view numbers, it's about the engagement numbers on YouTube. And we could get into YouTube algorithms until the end of time. But if we look at the UniFi Pro 8 testing video, I think that was like 20-30 minutes long off the top of my head. Now, that video was from 2 months ago. Production for just that video, none of the surrounding stuff around it, was around 30 hours. So that is setting the device up, testing, there was the power testing, thermal testing, noise testing there, and then of course you've got editing afterwards in production, then uploading the video, then you've got the meta, you've got thumbnails and links and chapters and stuff like that. That video achieved 16.2 thousand views, so that's 16,200. The click-through on that was 3.8, we'll get to that later on, and it generated on YouTube in ad revenue $124. Now, $124 does not touch the sides when it is over 30 hours of work. For videos like this and sustained reviews to remain sustainable, financially sustainable, affiliate marketing and links where we receive commission, again, be it Ubiquiti and UniFi or being any other brand and any other retail platform, are just a thing. That doesn't even factor in the time spent on emails back and forth, sourcing media and getting that sorted out for the testing and the surrounding equipment. Now, it'd be very easy for us to just go, oh, woe is me, smallest violin in the world, man gets free product, complains about profit. And you're right, I'm being tremendously churlish there. But I think we do at least have to take a step back and be objective about the actual real world cost of reviewing things. And again, this doesn't just extend to small channels of 5 to 10k subs, which in of themselves can be incredibly engaging because of the niche and relationship with the audience, but this extends to channels with millions of subscribers, millions, bordering on tens if not hundreds of millions of views there. This same logic extends up and extends down as productions scale up accordingly. Another UniFi product from Ubiquiti that, had this channel only relied on ad revenue, would have been a complete dead loss, was the USB 4 to 10G adapter. I don't have it here. Eddie over at Eddie the Web Guy, Digibyte, check him out. He's got that right now for testing. But that video, the review we did there, was 9 months ago. And in those 9 months, the video has achieved 26.5 thousand views and has generated $99 of revenue. Hopefully these are on screen. That was around 25 to 30 hours work. Because though it's an adapter, you still have to work out the bits either side, notwithstanding, again, correspondence, testing, setup, the metadata, the production, everything afterwards. So, again, commissions are important, but what about when it's not just UniFi? Because you might be thinking, well, NAS compares. You're looking at a lot of different brands, aren't you? Isn't there a bit of cha-ching coming from a lot of different sources? And we'll get onto that in a little bit more detail in a moment. But what about UniFi versus Synology? That was a great video. And that was from 3 months ago. It was an updated version of a video that we'd made when UniFi first launched the UNAS series. but a video from 3 months ago where we compared the latest iteration of UniFi's UNAS series versus Synology. 3 months ago, 48.7 thousand views, so a decent little number there. That generated just $351 of ad revenue via YouTube. Now, one can argue, and we'll get on to Patreon, we'll get on to YouTube members and stuff like that in a moment, but that was actually quite conservative. That video only clocked up 25 hours or so work. However, that was only because of the build-up of other devices, the knowledge, the B-roll that had been generated from other reviews, the stack-on, if you will, over time of experience and build-up of resources to make that review happen. It was by far the most generated from the videos we talked about today, and it had multiple brands involved, but still, that ad revenue would no way have paid for the stack up behind it. We make a lot of videos here on the channel, but ad revenue alone couldn't possibly pay for all of that. Now, Ubiquiti don't give us any money for the review. After that, we've got the Sound Commission and link in the bottom, and I don't care if you are a reviewer that's signed up to this Dippy creator agreement or not. Unfortunately, affiliated links and commissions are just a thing now with reviews, from the smallest to the biggest platforms. But what about if you don't want to use affiliated commission links? How many of you actually click the links? How many of you watch a video on Ubiquiti, UniFi, or anything else and actually click the links? And moreover, the number of devices these days that we use to watch video reviews or read reviews actively hiding the ability to click links. If you're watching this on a mobile phone or if you're watching this on your sofa, try to click a link. I dare you. Try to find the link, let alone click it. Click-through rates are depressingly low from a creator point of view when it comes to reviewing. And I'm going to say the review space in general, massive italic marks there. On top of that, when products are out of stock, are you listening, Ubiquiti? Or the fact that you might make an article on your website, you might make a review, a YouTube short, a TikTok. No one clicks stuff. And that goes all the way for Instagram and stuff like that. But it's exacerbated further when the creator space is now becoming heavily dependent on outside revenue streams such as Patreon, Ko-fi or Ko-fi, and YouTube membership. We've got a whole dedicated video on that very, very soon. Because of that, the ability to just buy products becomes difficult depending on your scale, let alone the number of people that are actually prepared to pay outside to support what you do. Here at NAS Compares, we provide free and expedited support via those platforms, as well as early access to content for those that care. But for a lot of users, they're going to buy one of these devices every 10 to 15 years. They don't want to pay to learn more. They've learnt, they've bought, they've moved on. So for me to sign an agreement with Ubiquiti to receive the products that I choose to review, in return to send them my review in advance, to them argue the toss on errors, argue the toss on inaccuracies, but more importantly, agree not to try and change my content to make themselves look better, that's something I'm prepared to agree to in order to extend reviews into some of these products. Again, I only review the things that I want to review, and if it's bad, I'll say it's bad. If it's good, I'll say it's good. And if I say it's middling, oh man, I'll have some fun with that. But what about how the UniFi Ubiquiti creator agreement and the way they do reviews compares against other brands? We'll talk about these in a moment. But when it comes to their NAS series, because that is the range of UniFi devices I've had the most experience with here on the channel, how does that compare with Synology, QNAP, TerraMaster, Acer Store, and a glut of new brands that have arisen in the last 12 to 18 months in the world of turnkey and DIY adjacent NAS solutions? Well, it's all largely the same. The only difference I would really highlight is the following. Number one, generally, other products, non-UNAS and non-UniFi products, just seem to arrive. I will arrive and suddenly there will be products from those brands on the doorstep, some more than others, and they'll send emails through with data sheets and review guides, and a review guide is simply a document that is ascertaining how to set up the device. I generally don't really look at them, but sometimes NAS devices get sent to people that don't really use NAS as much as I do. But that's really it. No money changes hands. They don't try to control or curate the reviews, and the point I'm making is the agreement I have with them is largely identical. The difference is, a lot of the time, that their embargo dates are more fixed than UniFi's. I will say that when it comes particularly Synology, when I've worked with them and they have an embargo date, it very rarely gets kicked down the road or made earlier or later. It's generally always rigid as all hell. But aside from that, it's largely the same. They don't really have an extensive creator agreement like UniFi does, but at the same time, they will ask from time to time to see a review in advance. But because I've not signed a creator agreement, I very, very, very rarely do. The exceptions to that would probably be things like the early B station, when I was dealing with the software in alpha and then beta form before I got the final version for the actual review. The process doesn't really change, but the reason I keep these on the table is these are representative of slightly different review processes. This, UT2, was a Kickstarter product. So when I reviewed this, I wanted to make it abundantly clear that this is not a product for traditional retail, and my review is indicative of it as an unfinished product, at least in terms of software, and that was the way forward it went. I didn't send them an early access review, they didn't see it in advance of anything, but reviewing something like this when it is being promoted and money being asked for on an unfinished product formally, that needs to affect the review. GLInet, a brand I've talked about a lot, is a brand I've worked with for quite a while. Now, reviewing their products, I get sent them, and a lot of the time I get sent the products way in advance of retail to play with and to give them active feedback on it. Again, not dissimilar to that of UniFi. The result being that a lot of the time I would have had days, weeks, and even months of experience with this product before I actually even start the formal review process. And then we have things like this. This is a collaboration I have at the moment with an e-retailer called WhatGeek. They sent a GPU card, they sent the U-Star docking station there, and they are providing these products, not paying a penny. They just want backlinks to go to their shop and direct people to buy it, by me saying this has been provided by that brand. Now, I don't think I am harming or at least undermining my review process of this eGPU box by saying there is a link below to get hold of that. I don't have an affiliate program with them. I don't make any money from them. It is there. Now, that all of these review processes are sort of adjacent to the Ubiquiti one there, but I could extend it to pretty much all of the reviews on the channel. This video is getting dangerously long, so much so that I'm now pulling arguments and descriptions where I don't know if they're relevant. So in the comments below, let's discuss this more. I might even open up a thread about this to discuss this in more detail. But we have to at least acknowledge that whether I'm reviewing UniFi / Ubiquiti products or others, we've really only got about 3 or 4 ways that reviews can remain financially sustainable. And by the way, I'm extending to the largest platforms and the smallest. Number 1, products are sent to reviewers by the brand and they have no control over it whatsoever. Now, again, that's a perfect scenario and does happen. Unfortunately, there is the opportunity when you're dealing with pre-release prototypes, pre-release software in alpha beta, where things cannot be representative of the final product. And I get why UniFi are sort of doing that, because they want to show the most polished version of their products. At the same time, I don't like the embargo system. I don't like the here is the line, but the line can be moved at any time nature of some of these programs. And unfortunately, there isn't just Ubiquiti that do these sorts of things. That is industry-wide, as a product can be delayed or pushed in and out, for good or for bad, whether it is software optimization and improvements or just tactical release strategy. It isn't just them, it can be everyone that does that. And then we got to answer the question of, would we prefer that, or would we prefer products to be sent and money to change hands prior to me talking on camera or written reviews happen? And I think that's worse. I do. I think it is worse, and especially worse if a brand sends a product and exchanges money. I could just click the sponsorship button on the bottom of the screen, but could you honestly tell me you would trust a review of this UNAS 2 if I started the video by saying Ubiquiti paid me a chunk of money, here's the review? Or would you prefer they sent the device? But again, I appreciate that the creator agreement is somewhere in the middle of that. And perhaps in moving forward when it comes to reviewing products like this, we need to at least acknowledge I signed a creator agreement before making this video, and the only corrections and only errors being changed are the things that the brand had any form of control over. But it's a bit wordy, we may need to do it better. But let's discuss it below. Let me know what you guys think. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to talk about this, everyone. But apart from that, I look forward to seeing you in the next video, which will hopefully not be as bloody heavy as this one. I'll see you next time.